Shotgun apes rejoice! This video is going to look at the two most iconic shotguns ever in the history of Destiny, reissued for D2, both of which are vying for your attention. Timelost Found Verdict arrived with the Vault of Glass in Season of the Splicer and was the ultimate reward for completing all the raid challenges on the Master difficulty. This Arc Energy aggressive frame shotgun is very special as it has a curated perk roll and a random roll on the same weapon. If you want to farm for better rolls, it can be purchased using Spores of Conquest once you've acquired it from the Maestro Glass of Triumph via the cache after beating Atheon. Alternatively, the normal non-Timelost version drops from various encounters throughout the raid, making it a ton easier to get and farm for. The Comedian is the newest Nightfall reward from Season of the Lost and is available on a 4 weekly rotation, with differing drop rates depending on the level you choose to tackle the weekly Nightfall at. This is an Void Energy aggressive frame shotgun, and it too has an Adept version which you can only get by completing the Grandmaster version of the Nightfall when it's available in the loot pool that week. It doesn't have a curated double perk drop like the Timelost Found Verdict, but all Adept versions will have Bottomless Grief as an extra perk in the third column regardless, granting a bonus to magazine size as well as auto reloading the weapon on final blows when you're the last fireteam member alive. I'm extremely lucky to have the Timelost and Adept version of both of these, so I'll be focusing on them specifically in this video, given that they are the pinnacle version of each weapon. But aside from the slight differences in what you can use mods wise on them, the normal versions will ultimately have the same outcome, so which is going to be better? These are both part of the aggressive frame family. This archetype of shotgun aren't directly in the meta right now due to the recent range stat adjustments, but they still pack a deep one-hit kill punch in the Crucible and also offer some excellent unique perk synergy and endgame build potential in PvE content, which in my opinion is a little bit slept on. They do actually have a ton of great perks they can roll with, bringing unique advantages and disadvantages wherever you choose to use them. I do have one which I am going to recommend to you all, and the result at the end might surprise you. But as we all know, Felwinters Lie is the best shotgun in this archetype, so cheers, take care, all the best. You know what? Felwinters is actually a relic compared to these two nowadays, as they just quite simply outdo it in more ways than one. From the deep and varied perk pool, better stats and the fact that both can have the Adept treatment, you should be prizing the sweet Lie out of your hands as soon as possible and upgrading your W key game. Ironically, these two weapons are both super easy and super difficult to farm for depending on which variety you want or how important having an Adept version is to your collection. We're primarily going to focus on the PvE side of these shotguns because ultimately I feel they do have a lot to offer, but it'd be rude not to provide you with the PvP options given how prevalent they once were and arguably how popular aggressive frames still are amongst the community. Realistically, there's not too much difference between any of the aggressive frame shotguns anymore, as the range stat is somewhat capped regardless of how high or how low the stat of the weapon actually is. The pellet spread cone angle and range drop off was significantly reined in recently, so that most have a one hit kill of 6 to 7 meters depending on the role. With an ideal range masterwork plus an Adept range mod, this is true for the Comedian, which outside of the excellent barrel and magazine options available here, it lacks any real PvP defining perks, maxing its range out at about 6.5 meters. This varies with either full choke, which constrains the pellet spread even more, or rifled barrel, which increases its range dramatically but won't tighten the spread in any way, meaning it may be less consistent at the maximum distance to actually hit enough pellets on targets to net that final blow. So for the sake of about 30 centimeters, we could argue until the cows come home, but let's move on. The Timelost Found Verdict is 100% the real winner here, beating out even the consistent fan favourite of Felwinters. A certain roll combo will get you a deep 8 meters one hit kill. With the combination of rifle barrel, accurized rounds, slide shot and opening shot, along with a perfect range masterworks and Adept range mod, it's quite the god roll. However, it may also be heavily inconsistent thanks to rifle barrel, with its pellet spread RNG randomness along with the recent slide nerf making slide shot just as inconsistent, proving that range isn't everything. I've found in PvP using either of these shotguns that handling is just as important, so try combining these weapons with rolls, mods or exotics that will boost the handling and effectiveness of them. A combination of a solid range stat providing the consistent 6+ meter shot and handling boost through either something like corkscrew rifling, a handling masterwork or even the Adept handling mod can't be underestimated. Aggressive frame shotguns though are very unforgiving in the Crucible if you don't get that one hit kill, as you just won't get a second shot off quickly enough to beat up a follow-up shot from a lightweight Reese Walker or a Chaperone Crutch who may have somehow missed its huge meteor sized precision hitbox. However, in PvE, these shotguns offer a huge damage output regardless, and like I said at the start, these are slept on out in the wild. Contrary to popular belief, these weapons have some S tier perks that really do shine in PvE content and can be especially useful in the endgame, as long as you play into their effective playstyle and strengths. One of the most forgotten parts about aggressive frame shotguns is actually in plain sight on every single roll. Increases rate of fire after a kill. This isn't anything that's game breaking, and unless you're going on some godly streak in PvP, you've never likely noticed it either. But it's 100% a thing that just naturally improves the handling and playstyle of these shotguns in PvE. Pair this with something like Assault Mag in the magazine slot to increase the weapon's base rate of fire from 55 to 60 on either the Found Verdict and the Comedian, and you'll be getting roughly a 25% increase in the rate of fire, pushing it into the natural territory of both precision and lightweight frame shotguns like the Retold Tale and the Reese Walker. Not to mention that you can get rewind rounds to roll in the Found Verdict, you can continue this rate of fire for upwards of 8 shots without having to reload. As long as you're hitting targets with every shot of your magazine to take advantage of the perk when you empty the magazine, roughly refilling 30 to 40% of the shots landed. Full auto is also going to allow you to maximise that higher rate of fire against chunkier enemies, pumping out some top tier high burst DPS, perfect for dealing with champions or mini bosses alike. Subsistence is probably the best perk on the Comedian to take advantage of this increased rate of fire, as each subsequent kill will reload 1 round in the magazine, meaning you can clear rooms with yellow bars quite easily without the need to reload. Alternatively, Bottomless Grief could also be a particularly handy perk, as not only does it grant you a bonus to your magazine size as standard, but it'll also auto reload your magazine on kill when you're the last living fireteam member. Remember, this perk does come as standard on all Adept rolls of the Comedian, and so if you're not a fan of your Genesis roll, then this is definitely a strong perk choice. Luckily, both weapons come with a choice of top draw damage dealing perks to back up the strong complementary perks we've just gone over, and by far the most popular is the ever faithful and consistent Vorpal weapon perk. This grants a 15% damage boost against bosses, vehicles and guardians in their supers, so there's no better time than the present for a quick DPS check. As they're in the same archetype, there really isn't any difference in the damage output using Vorpal, or even Frenzy for that matter, which can be a solid choice on the Found Verdict. Both will hit for just over 36,000 per shot, with DPS sitting about 43,000 over a 6 round magazine. Obviously, this can vary depending on your magazine size options and also rate of fire, with Assault Mag and the intrinsic aggressive frame buff as we've discussed. But for that matter, keep in mind that with a mag boosting perk, Bottomless Grief and the Adept mag mod, you can also get a 7 round magazine on the Comedian, which is going to net you 250,000 overall damage output. Likewise, a rewind rounds and Adept mag Found Verdict could get you 9 rounds, pushing the damage output up even higher. But this means you can't whiff any shots, otherwise you'll be stuck at the maximum 6 round base magazine size you can achieve on this shotgun. If getting boss stomped consistently by having to be so incredibly close to even make the damage count without fall off, you might want to take a look at the other top damage perk options available. One for All and Trench Barrel are going to give you some sweet damage boosts on the Comedian, but given how specific they are to actually activate, I just can't recommend using them. The same goes for 1-2 Punch on the Found Verdict. It will give you a huge melee damage boost after hitting all your pellets on a target, but with these melee builds being very niche and the added nerf to the previously popular and OP Liar's Handshake, it's really not a goer. Yet there's one pick that stands out above the rest: Adrenaline Junkie. This meme perk is due an imminent buff in the 30th anniversary update, and so it could become a must-have perk. It does mean that you're likely to have to focus on a grenade centric build, but with top picks like Nothing Manacles, Ashen Wake and even Young Haramkara's Spine, they are easy to set up. Offering a rampage style buff at a 3x stack of Adrenaline Junkie, it definitely makes this roller chase option on the comedian, if not just to keep until the details for the buff are announced. Speaking of grenade focused builds, Demolitionist will also fit perfectly into a rewind rounds found verdict role, as you can throw your grenade to fully reload the weapon after maximising your rewind rounds usage. Fresh is another option and is perfect for super boosting builds using the Void Comedian with something like Warlock's Nezarec Sin or the Battle Harmony. Personally, I don't think there's too much difference between either of these weapons, and it really is going to come down to your personal choice playstyle wise, whether you just want a solid all-rounder like the Found Verdict, or if you want to lean into a more focused build style with the Comedian. If you were going to ask me what my ideal role would be for the Comedian though, I'd have to suggest Subsistence and Vorpal Weapon, along with Assault Mag to increase the base rate of fire and Corkscrew Rifling for some good stat boosts in key areas. A Handling Masterwork would be really nice, because it's going to improve your swap and store speeds as well as your aim down sight speed, making the gun feel really consistent when you're moving between combatants. Adept Handling or the Adept Big One spec are going to be the best mod choices in my opinion, with Boss spec being the best non-Adept choice here too. Handling is definitely the way you want to go with these heavy sluggish feeling weapons in PvE, especially if you're wanting to benefit from the intrinsic rate of fire increase that you can achieve. It makes them feel a lot more usable and makes that deep feeling oomph even more impactful as you whiz it around from engagement to engagement. As for the Found Verdict, and speaking of handling, Rewind Rounds and Frenzy would be my top pick. Rewind Rounds is going to extend your uptime, and Frenzy is going to net you that all around 15% damage boost, as well as excellent boost to your handling and reload speed, making it quite possibly the snappiest aggressive frame shotgun to date. It has downsides in that getting the perk to activate can be frustrating, but once it is, it's game time. Again, I'd choose both Corkscrew Rifling and Assault Mag for the neutral game benefits, but this time, and thanks to Frenzy, you'd ideally want a Range Masterwork and the Adept Big One spec mod or Boss spec. Frenzy really is that game changing on this shotgun, allowing you to focus on other aspects perk wise to complement it, and in this case, extending its range to make it more effective. Don't forget that on Masterwork in the Adept or Timelost weapons, you'll get small stat boosts to all stats across the board. These aren't necessarily game changing, but improved handling and reload outside of your perks isn't anything to be sniffed at, and this is what in my opinion makes chasing them desirable. As you can see, there really isn't too much to go between these two shotguns, but finally we've got to look at the stats on a base level to see if there's anything that stands out. Found Verdict really does have a higher base range, hence the role recommendation for PvP at the start of the video, but you have a naturally higher inventory size on the Comedian, allowing for that 7-round magazine size. Even looking at the weapon model in game, they're nearly identical when aiming down sights, with the Comedian arguably being a tiny bit more sleek and cleaner to use. Now we know that these aren't even particularly meta this season given the potency of fusion rifles with the particle deconstruction mod from the seasonal artifact, but there's absolutely place in your loadout for a top tier yellow bar destroying shotgun, and that's why the Timelost Found Verdict gets the dub and hits top bins today. I just can't get over the fact how much potential the Frenzy role has in all aspects of the game. It makes it feel like a lightweight shotgun with the big punch that aggressive frames have. The beauty is that you can pair it with a Frenzy rolled Fatebringer to keep the Frenzy uptime even easier to manage, and which is also arguably the best ever hand cannon in the history of Destiny. Chuck on Adept Big One spec and oh my. It's also way more farmable on a base level compared to the Comedian, and with it being behind both the Master Raid and the Master Challenge Triumph, it has me thinking that Bungie set this shotgun up to be something special, more so than the meme that players believe it to be. But And there's a big but, keep an eye on that Adrenaline Junkie perk buff in the near future, because if it becomes remotely more accessible to use in game, the comedian may just nick this one at that point. You might find it tough to remove Felwinters Lie from your grips, but there's more to the world than it, and either of these shotguns might actually surprise you if you give them a go. This video is a bit of a leap of faith from my regularly scheduled programming, but it's the direction I'm looking at taking my PvE focused content in, so hopefully you enjoyed the deep dive and found it informative. If you did, then please leave a like below. It took a ton of time and effort to put together, so it'd be greatly appreciated, and also why not subscribe if you're new here too. If you did like this video, then why not check out my breakdown on the new Elemental Time Dilation Stasis mod, one you will likely be able to use with either of these shotguns to be honest. I've been Truds, this has been your Shotgun Battle, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.